Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. It's been a very long time since I've done a video, especially a video relating to the game in terms of like booting up the game, actually recording footage. As you can see, I'm scrolling here. Usually I'm just reading a patch note or have a couple images like a slideshow. If you have been watching my videos up to this point and you are watching this one, I really appreciate your support. Of course, it's like, you know, I don't really deserve this, but really appreciate that. This one's gonna be slightly special because it's Landy. And I really like her design. I like her design as in like aesthetic. It's good enough, all right? It's not like over sexual, but mainly like her kit is just insanely loaded. And I felt like, you know, sometimes I make videos because I'm excited about her character, and she definitely gets me excited. So this Guild War video is gonna be focused on the Guild War versus FuwaFuwa. It was a Friday Guild War. Landy was released on a Thursday after patch. And so I just wanted to test her out. Now, I'm not saying that she's like a Guild War queen or anything like that. I think she's still like on an AI based PvP, probably better defensively than offensively, but in RTA she seems to be doing pretty well. So anyways, I know a couple of guys in the FuwaFuwa guild, so shout out to you guys. Hopefully you guys, if some of you guys are watching, hope you guys enjoy this. And for those watching in general, hope you enjoy this as well. Yeah, so this comp I'm just gonna Ludwig cleave. So bookholder is on my Zeo and my Ludwig's on portrait. So if my Zeo is faster than their Zeo, generally I just push them back, hopefully, or silence. And then if they're faster, it doesn't matter because it's really Ahmed and Ludwig doing the rest of the work here. Always stun Karina because Karina can actually cut Ludwig's second turn. So always stun Karina, and plus the defense buff is too big anyway. So that was a quick one. So again, on the Landy. Landy teams that I, you know, brought her into is that she's a solo DPS. So even in World Arena, I think she needs at least 2 support. So she's pretty good for standard. But you definitely need someone that has some kind of mitigation property, whether Aureus Holder, Escort, you know, what have you. All these types of mitigation that we have. Barrier, proc or whatever if you don't have a knight, and a healer and maybe a buffer or something. Generally I think she'll shine that way, so I brought that same kind of theory into my Guild War attacks, which again, realistically it could be any hero that has similar properties, but right now Landy is insanely packed. I mean, having counter set, Elber's Ritual Sword as mine does, and then brought into this where everybody's going after other heroes, like she's just going off crazy. But this team was pretty degen though, so I have to say that I was happy that I brought my Landy and like Destina and FCC, because apparently that Mercedes, as you saw, it was like 13,000 HP and it was on injury. When I was doing this, I'm like, wait, why am I getting injured? Like, who has it? Like, I've seen a Shu have injury. But this one was like base speed Shu with almost 30k HP and on Proof of Valor. It was obviously just to stop a cleave. But yeah, so like usually when you Landy get full focus in S3, like the whole team dies, right? Self attack buff, and she's stacking attack all the way up to this point, and a 60% defense pen AOE. That stun actually coming in, awesome. She didn't resist. And this Shu actually going pretty hard on my Destina there with that counter. But again, it's just a really bulky one. So I think the theory for this defense is like, opponents don't cleave me because I got Mercedes, and then you'll get like injured or something, and with like a bulk team. But because the Shu was so bulky, I think it sort of quote unquote lacked damage. So otherwise I think my FCC would have been dead there, and even when my Landy got hit. But either way, the salvo fire for my entire Guild War actually went off a lot. Like this, well, this one's guaranteed, but even my random ones went off quite a lot, so it was pretty cool. Because she really reminds me of like Green Charles, and I always felt Green Charles was really satisfying when he did slash and smash. So S1 into S2. They really need to buff Charles. I mean, they already have Shu and Landy, right? Just buff Charles. Because I want Mr. Charles to come back. Yeah, that's so bulky. Like, at this point, I'm stacked, too. That Maru is so bulky. But yeah, the non-tank crit helping there. But with the 30k HP Shu, I don't think that crit damage is gonna be high anyway. But yeah, that was a pretty long fight to be honest. But at least Landy really popped off, so it wasn't a snooze fest. Okay, so this is the second fight. This is against the Stronghold, Armadeus. So again, same concept. I thought that the best way to use Landy is to have a healer, support, maybe buffer. In this case, I think like Amelia was really good here. And then Aros as the tank. Really only to do a dual attack. There's no other benefit outside of that. Like maybe like a Crow could have been good too, just so you can S3 down the Aiden right away. But my whole intention was just to use the extra procs and hit ROL as my target, and then hopefully everybody just dies that way. That was the plan at least. My Aros does have pretty good ER, but I think I got lucky with the resistance there. Yeah, I didn't foresee this as a problem. Again, like I don't, even if the Aiden did counter, which she does here, I didn't feel like it would have done too much. But with the anti-crit buff and Landy's like innate anti-crit, it was pretty hard to kill. The Aiden actually did start popping off onto my Aros. I think I do almost lose him. Yeah, I just wanted the attack buff in conjunction with her stacking buffs. Yeah, but you can see FuwaFuwa actually going off really well. This is the second fight. Yeah, so I was just trying to do like, I was trying to weigh out like, okay, I have a 2-turn attack buff, sorry, 2-turn defense buff, so I could wait one more turn, but it started hitting pretty hard with all these people like trying to, or all the heroes like wailing on him. So I was like, oh man, am I gonna get off an S2 quick enough? Because I didn't even have a heal here. And my Amelia is not on Guardian Ice Crystal. I should have swapped it. It's on Touch of Rekos because she's my like Katie's farmer. And also just because I ran out of Guardian Ice Crystals. But I think for this fight, it would have been better because my Aros would have had less risk of dying. I think he actually does die. He has to die here, right? Because I do a crit. Oh, I remember what happened. I stunned, yeah. yeah. So that was really cool, right? Like I like the stun too, like I always forget about it. It's just like she's too stacked, you know? She's too stacked. This second team again, same concepts as the previous fight. Zio tries to speed contest, and then this like Cecilia is a bit slower than my Ahmed. This concept is similar as well. It's like I know that I can't stun Landy, right? But at least I can remove Shu's anti-crit, and then that way 2 of them will be dead. So this one was risky, I will say. Like if Landy countered and then AoE'd, then skill null would have been broken on 2, and then she would have cut. But at least I got rid of partially like 1 of the damage. So I will admit, like my comp versus this was not as solid. I think I would have probably ran like what's it called? Like some kind of like a Runka Huayang combo with what's her name? B-Dom? Bunny Dom? I would have done that instead. So yeah, like none of these countered, right? And I don't think it was on injury or anything. Oh, it was countered. So I could have got unlucky, like 1 salvo fire there, and I think my Ludwig would be dead. But my Ludwig has skill null still, so I was kind of getting worried here because the self-heal was actually getting to be annoying. But good thing we made it through. But otherwise, yeah, I shouldn't be bringing this kind of comp into Landy. Alright, so this is the last fight. You'll see this level 5 politics I bring in. It's my kamikaze team for these all mid teams. This one was also pretty, you know, the Lilius into Senya, kind of obvious that probably it's like cleave Lilius and high damage Senya, but the speed tuning is off. There's no attack buff on the Senya. So it's a bit confusing, like maybe just attack buff from the Ran, but then Ran needs the speed, so I always figure like it doesn't matter, like Lilius won't hurt here too much. But I was basically trying to get some counters in, and again, Landy for this Guild War did not disappoint. You know, you would have some Guild Wars or attacks if you use her and she just does not proc. But I'm glad she did. So this is a 17,000 HP, like Senya, probably like a 5.5k attack. Like it would be probably pretty standard. Right now Ran is the biggest threat. Technically Senya too, because I had no way to heal outside of Salvo Fire. So, but again, like I said, Landy did not disappoint. She's just popping off. Like for all of my fights this one. So like in terms of like a real guild war, I would not recommend using her. There's no real mechanic where she is better, because she's a realistically an RNG, or you have to sustain her until she can S3. So like you have to base off RNG or sustain till the S3, which means a tank and a healer. But this team that I have hand guys. I was not a healer, so it was I would lean it towards a more ballsy move. Otherwise, it's better just to go with a healer that can attack buff ideally. So Mei Chloe would be good there. Amelia I think is pretty good there. Yeah, so this is pretty much it. So Politics here is the book holder. Just in case people are still struggling with this defense comp, I guess this is the only education I give you. My BBK is on Bastion of Hope with 120 ER and 5k attack, 300 crit damage. It's on Destruction Torrent. So generally I've seen variants like this where there's like a Mercedes or whatever. It doesn't matter what the Politics is only to break the barrier, or sorry, to break the skill null and then give you souls for a serious soul burn, and you'll win no matter what because the BBK should be able to kill. But I didn't land a defense break on the Ahmed, which made me realize like how could I not kill her. So I'm full, like lowest HP possible, right? So realistically you have the passive stack. So like I should have been able to kill that Ahmed there, but I didn't. So I guess the difference between the ER BBK. But anyways, that's it for that. Alright, now that we're done with the commentary and the fights, if you don't have her yet, I definitely think she's one of the better ML5s released if you're not a cleaver, alright? And when I say that, I mean that being a cleaver is highly gear dependent. Even with ML Rowanna's release, ideally she wants 0 speed in her gear, but she still requires you to have like fast openers. So usually I feel like bruiser heroes like ML Landy, ML Bologna, they're generally more acceptable, but then of course you would probably have to farm a different hunt than Wyvern. Regardless, without going into too much detail there, I'm going to talk about the hero, but before I do that, I want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters supporting me monthly. And I mean, these guys just, you know, you guys just are slaying it. Again, like I said, I don't believe I deserve you guys at all, so appreciate you guys. Kariha, Deek Boy, Potatoes, Light Neo, thank you guys for continuing supporting. I'm gonna leave the link to the Patreon on the bottom in case you've been watching me for a long time and you think that you want to support there. But outside of that, let's just get right into the build. So I'm gonna bring up my ML Landy, which again, I have her at B imprint because I dropped the slate on her. If you guys remember that the summer event caused some form of compensation, and one of them was a slate, if they thought that was actually going to fix the event issues, but I did wholeheartedly use that slate, thankfully, into ML Landy. Now, I kind of even want a bit more. I mean, her base attack for her being a Leo Knight, so same as Fire Charlotte, is not insanely high, but it is one of the higher ones. At least it's better than like something like Green Charles. So, you know, her attack imprint is not even that bad, but realistically, I think the money is the release, the HP release being on the 12.9, same slots as Destina, which as I'm making this recording is still usable as a healer in places like World Arena, offensive and defensive PvP. So this is super high value imprint in my opinion. The very fact that she is a limited, she requires limited imprints, makes it very like, do I even want to talk about this on this video? I'm not quite sure, but for those of you who don't know my take on it, I don't necessarily like the fact that they're doing it this way. There has been definitely a lot of changes, if you haven't noticed, since the China server had been opened, but I won't go too deep into that commentary, except that I just don't really like the way that they are doing that. Ideally, if in the future, if possible, Smoggy, if you're watching this, is that ML5s that require limited imprints ideally get 1 free imprint. Like, that's the least you can do, right? Or increase the amount of free slates we get, because just 1 per arena season is just not long, and like it's too long, you know. But regardless, if you have the bookmarks or whatnot, Landy banners, and when Landy gets returned individually or in a triple banner or in a selective banner or whatever have you, future banners, it might be decent to pull this in terms of pull some Landys to get imprint, depending on how ML Landy will be in the future. Right, but she, at least right now, I feel like her imprints, both the release and the concentration, are very, very good. Now, talk about artifacts first, I think, and then we'll get into the gear when I think about it. But of course, you can see my build right there. There's no hiding, so it is what it is. Elber's Ritual Sword, I think, is the first thing that people will think about. It's just because that her Salvo Fire actually does proc with dual attacks, counter attacks, Elberus, on her own turn. So it's just like, that's like kind of like a no-brainer. Now, I've seen people starting to experiment with more like different knight artifacts, more offensive ones, but I think that Elberus Ritual Sword will always be a pretty decent one, especially if you have a spare Elberus. There's not too many heroes that actually use Elberus Ritual Sword right now, in terms of a knight that's meta. Green Armin if you use her, Bellion if you use her, but like that's pretty much it. You could say Mort or anything like that, but I think that one of her best, like in terms of this, just synergizes with her kit much more than I would say any other artifact. So I think Elberus Ritual Sword is her best in slot. Gives her attack and decent HP. So if you put it on other knight artifacts, let's say for example, like if I can just swap here, just say like, obviously you're not going to use Rocket Punch, but like Justice for All as an example, okay? Not that you would use this, but it has like higher HP but lower attack, whereas she is like a combo of both, right? So Leo Knights don't have insanely high HP, insanely high defense. It's just like pretty even everywhere. So realistically, you're kind of trying to get that sweet spot. And that's the same for your gear, in terms of percent based stuff. Like you don't ideally want like flat defense, flat HP. You want percent based defense, percent based HP, because she has like 600 something defense, 6,000 something HP. So you want percent based. It will always give you the best bang for buck per roll. I put her on a defense set. I see that people put her on immunity set. The only thing that I think the immunity set would be good for, to be honest, is like a first turn defense break, which might end her role on the field too quick. So I say immunity has some value, but I went with gear score sets. Now I've seen other players also use crit set, but crit set of course is technically slightly lower gear score when you combine the sets versus a defense set or HP set, which again, defense set and HP set does scale pretty well off her base defense or HP. So I would say if you have the luxury of running some golem sets on her, it wouldn't be a bad idea. But outside of that, if you've been farming Wyvern all your life, you most likely will have some bruisery crit sets that probably would be better than defense set, except that it's just me, I just kind of wanted the defense set on. I might look into a crit set in the future, but regardless, you probably don't want something like Torrent set or Pen set. I think her whole drive is to survive long enough that she can do the S3. So my concept in thinking about her is that like your build or your sets will have to just basically have, again, if you're drafting her in a world arena, ideally you have a mitigation knight or a source of mitigation, whether that be barrier, anti-crit, extra anti-crit, anti-crit buff, or like any way to keep her alive, because that's where she really starts adding value to the team, right? Outside of the first turn crit rate buff, but crit resistance buff rather. So I would look into that. Like that's how I conceptually build her. It's just more of like she needs to survive to get the S3 off, so what can I do to make her survive, and that's to be as bulky as possible. But of course her salvo fire, let's talk about the kit. Combat readiness increased by 25% when this proc, so counter Elber is really good there. After attacking, 40% chance to activate salvo fire as an extra attack, and then this attacks all enemies and also recovers the health of her that's increasing to the caster's attack, right? So you don't want to be super low attack because the heal has decent value. So if you're familiar with using like lifesteal set heroes, it's the same concept there. Whether your lifesteal set hero is attack based or HP based or defense based, your heal back is, you need like a good ratio to get like the best bang for buck, right? I'm not gonna go into the math because I don't even know exact math, but in terms of conceptually, you can kind of understand that having her too low attack wouldn't be that good. But thankfully though, she's just insane. Like I said, as to immune to debuffs which prevent movement, right now would be speed and stun, oh sorry, sleep and stun. Increases the crit resistance by 70%, that's innate, that's insanely good. And then at the start of the turn, of course, this is her supportive element for the teammates. Critical hit resistance of all allies except for the caster for 2 turns. So 2 turn, 50% defense, 50% crit resistance. It means that on the get-go, she's like a functioning FCC, right? So not the barrier per se, but functioning like that. That means like she's going to be good into people who want to cleave you. So that's why I think she's going to be insanely good for a long time on defensive teams. It's just like how you mix and match her support to beat opponents' cleave teams if you're thinking from a defensive standpoint, right? But because you have the anti-crit right away, you're already negating people to try to rush you down with like crit based heroes, right? So realistically, I think if you put it on her defense, you need some way to prevent them from soul burning strip. I think that's a pretty good one. So Bellion, of course, or you run a very, very fast damage dealer that can wipe their soul holder or whatever, something along those lines. You need to think about that. And then the other type of support is like, you know, you sustain the damage, which means you have to have a healer, like a mitigation, some kind of knight or something like that. Also very high value for her. Just really compounds with the crit hit resistance buff. But then of course it doesn't end there. After attacking, increases the attack of the caster by 10%, and then stack up to 50 times. That's nutty, right? That's like 10% less than Green Landy. But like you wouldn't expect that all, you know. Ruler of the Sea, this is like insane. So she gets like, that's why your attack can be, I think, 3k start. Assuming you're countering, assuming you're elbrusing, you're just going to have like stacking really quick. So 50%, you're really getting an attack buff on top of a self attack buff, which stacks. By the time you can use your S3, you need to consume the fighting spirit, increase the attack of the caster by 3 turns, which is, that's like insane. That's super high value. Like most like heroes have a 2-turn attack buff. She gives a 3-turn attack buff to herself. It's nutty. Attacks all enemies with worship, of course, and then stunning for 1 turn, which you saw that in the guild where it actually had value, and then penetrates the defense by 60%. I don't think there's as loaded kit as her in the recent ML5 releases, and that didn't require a buff, right? So there are other heroes that were released that's like, oh, okay, conceptually like ML Chiron's S3 is pretty cool if he has Fury or whatever and it builds up, it actually seems to be really good, but then he has other issues, and then he's waiting for a buff. And then for her, it's like everything is like right on the nail, you know what I mean? Like I don't feel like she needs a buff for a very, very long time. So yeah, overall, like insane character. I want to pull more Green Landy, to be honest, just to top this off. I think she's super high value. Just again showing my gear here. So this is 102 gear score. That's why I went with the defense set, to be honest. It's just because I had some decent like gear score defense set. This one's kind of low. This one's okay as well. And this one's also really good. And then this one's okay, so. It has flat defense, which this took an extra roll, but she has 600 base defense, so 1 roll of flat defense is acceptable, but I wouldn't go too far into flat defense on her. Ideally you're chasing percent base stuff, and then this speed boot is pretty good. So let me talk about really quickly what I think her best build should be, right? So I had a lot of people come on the stream and just basically asking and probably just cross-referencing what different content creators, different streamers thought. But here's my thought on her. To be honest, what I would do is run her on a speed boot, assuming you have good gear score, right? So because she's a bruiser by nature, she needs to have good gear score in general. So realistically, you're gonna try to run a 450 gear score ML Landy. Now, if you're kind of new or you don't have the gear for it, you know what, don't worry. But I would say, like, you know, build up to it. Try to get her to 450 gear score, and if anything, I think her best, like the sweet spot of her speed would be like give her a speed boot because it's the best value in terms of stats, and then crit rate neck, again, best value. This is the most ideal scenario. Whether you go HP or attack ring, I don't think that matters. Although if you put a attack ring on, you will be higher attack and it's going to be harder to find the HP. So I would highly recommend the HP ring. Whether it has defense or attack in it or whatever, crit rate is all fine. But try to pick pieces that don't have too much speed. So like this one having 12 speed, I'm at 160 speed. My experience is that you don't want to be base speed. If you're a base speed hero, here, check this out. So I'm gonna use like like an attack boot, right? Yes, I'm getting 500 what do you call it, 500 attack, but if you're gonna try to aim for a bit higher speed, you're gonna waste too many rolls onto other pieces. And like I said, because speed boot has relatively higher roll than attack based boot or an HP based boot. So I could do something like this as well if I went with counter. Like this is a pretty low gear score as well, but like you're not gaining a lot out of that versus 45 speed. And why I would recommend you having a speed boot and try not having any other speed is that so she's not super slow. I've observed some players using base speed Landy. If she's fighting into a Rowana team and that Rowana team, let's say, has like Fire Charlotte on the team, you're gonna be run over because like they're gonna lap you way too hard. But if she's about 150 speed, I think that's like the best sweet spot. One, you're gaining the most stats, right? So assuming you think speed is a stat that's usable, you want to put on speed boot. Everything else have like base speed. Here, let me show this. So this is a lower gear score helmet, right? But this would have given me, I think, the better like balance, right? So I'm gaining 14 crit damage. The only reason I took this off is because it has lower gear score in general, right? So versus 101, this is 93, right? So in-game gear score. But you look at the bulk, right? So it doesn't feel like I'm losing too much bulk, and it feels like I'm gaining a lot. The crit damage getting 14%, and then the attack only lost a bit. And realistically, I mean, the bulk, the EHP, just kind of just flipped. But 150 speed is honestly, I think, my experience is the best sweet spot. Anything lower might be a bit too slow, and I wouldn't recommend base speed anyway. But anything higher, 160, you're not going to see too much of a difference versus something like a 150 on my right side. So that's what I would say. Now, in terms of sets, I already talked about the two-piece set. I would suggest, you know, whatever highest gear score two-piece set you have, that's either crit rate, immunity, defense, or HP set. But probably you'll most likely have immunity or crit set ready. In terms of the four-piece set, a lot of people are asking, well, should I go like, you know, destruction set, which, you know, is the highest gear score if you're talking about overall sets, highest gear score, so she get more stats out of it, or you go lifesteal set for more healing, more sustain. I would say counter in all scenarios myself. I've seen injury as well. Injury conceptually also works, but realistically you're killing off by the S3, and I don't think you need to injure your opponents to kill off stuff by the S3. I'm pretty sure she starts killing without them being injured, but injury just speeds up the process, I suppose. But counter set is, here's the reason why I think counter set is important. People think, okay, if you're on counter set, they're not gonna focus you down. That's not true. If you're on counter set, they're still gonna focus you down, right? Depending on the scenario, right? If there's a bigger threat that has, let's say there's like a strays, you drafted it with your Captain Landy, of course they're gonna try to kill off the strays first, right? But in terms of, let's say you have like 2 support and a healer and Captain Landy, they're probably gonna try to take her out or take out the mitigation knight first, or maybe the healer, but most likely mitigation knight and then her. Regardless, I think the counter holds high value in case they do AoE or forced to do AoE. Or the other thing is that if they realize that she's on counter, lifesteal, or destruction, it doesn't matter. They're gonna try to kill her off ASAP because they don't want her to ramp up. So conceptually, why counter is good is not that they won't hit her. It's that if they hit her, they might get punished for hitting her. That's the only reason. So sometimes people say that, oh, it's on counter set, so people will try not to hit them. that isn't what I'm thinking for the counter set on ML Landy. My reasoning for counter Landy is that so that if they do hit her, they get punished for it. And because she has salvo fire that is able to increase her or able to heal herself, they might lose the value of the hit to begin with, you know what I mean? But let's say you're 150 speed and you're on destruction set, and they have their bruisers or whatever lined up, 180 speed, 200 speed, 230 speed. So like Last Rider crowd goes, like Shu or something, whatever. Just imagine it. They have them lined up. You have to ask yourself, will you Captain Landy survive if it was on destruction, if it was on lifesteal, right? Assuming that she doesn't proc Elbrus. But if she procs counter, maybe it's good. So, you know, that's just my reasoning for it. Doesn't mean I'm right, but if you agree with it, of course you might consider the counter set over the other ones if you're struggling. All right, that's the only reason why I'm sharing that info. Anyways, so that's my thought. And like I said, it's like amazing hero. I think definitely her kit is worth for the imprints to be a limited hero. As much as I don't like that, it is worth. Like, her kit is actually very robust, right? So I'm gonna end that there. Let me know what you guys think about her, your build, your experiences with her in the comment section down below. As usual, thank you guys for watching. So I'm gonna end this here. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, which is now formerly named X. This is gonna take a long time for me to get used to, but yeah, thanks for watching and subscribe if you haven't. So I'll talk to you guys next time.